Welcome to Get the Elephants Out of the Room. I'm Chris Webber. We all have to deal with difficult people at work, difficult managers, difficult colleagues, and difficult customers. In this podcast, we share stories and experiences of people like you who face these challenges and share their secrets to success. Our mission is to help everyone overcome obstacles and to become more confident, better communicators. So sit back and relax while we unravel the mysteries of another difficult person. Today's podcast episode is a real reconnection from the past for me with a guy who had a huge impact in my life, actually in my career back in 1997 when I took my first job in the pharmaceutical industry in sales. And I met this guy and he is a huge character. And even over the space of about a year or so that we worked together, I've got so many amazing memories and so much inspiration from him on that's influenced my career and future since then. He doesn't know that because I've never told him that, so nobody mentioned it during the conversation. But it's great to have Andy Gibson join us on the podcast. Welcome, Andy.
Hi, Chris. Thanks very much. And thanks for the kind introduction. It is terrific to be reintroduced to you and just have a look at what you've been doing. It's quite inspirational. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think we're going to have a bit of fun with it.
Yeah, I hope so too. So, Andy, introduce yourself to the audience. Let us know kind of who you are today, what are you up to, and what sort of philosophies do you hold?
So, Chris, Andy Gibson. Clearly, I'm from Texas in the US. You can tell from my accent. Since we met in the UK, I've had a very sort of, I believe, quite a privileged, in my opinion, quite a privileged career. I feel lucky to have done what I've done. I've worked in many companies in many industries across the globe, lived in many countries. I've been a chief marketing officer for some big organisations three times, big global organisations three times. And about 8 years ago, I took the decision to step out of the corporate world and move to the beach in LA and start a small consultancy business called The Edge. And I bring, hopefully, I bring all of my experience that I've had the luck of accumulating over the years to clients, and I help them with their brand. I help them with commercial strategy. I help them with leadership, and I really love what I do. So it's been quite a journey since we last met, Chris.
Yeah, and what I take out of our conversations, and certainly what I remember from back in '97, was your broad view of commercialization. We met as salespeople, and even then, you had quite an experience and a career in marketing. But you see the big picture, Andy. I think that's one of the things that I always find really inspiring and powerful about you. It's not just about what's our marketing strategy. It's how does this translate to sales? How does this translate to the structure of the organization we're working in? And it's the big picture. And I guess that's how you operate today.
Yeah, Chris. Look, I mean, my view that has actually it's materialized and solidified, I guess, over the years is that if marketing just becomes the pretty pictures department, and before I offend marketing people, I just want to say I'm a career marketing person. If we become the pretty pictures department, we actually have minimized the potential for our impact in an organization because actually we should be about growth. We should be about building brilliant brands. And part of that building brilliant brands actually has to be rubber on the road. It has to be about execution. And we need to actually oscillate between being custodians of that brand but also being commercial advocates for our commercial partners. We have to think of ourselves as part of their team, actually. And with that comes an accountability, a responsibility to understand the dynamics of the commercial world, to understand the conversations our partners might be in, and to actually help them, to actually tool them up and help them and give them the basis to be having the right conversations about our brands that hopefully helps the group as a whole, not just either group, the group as a whole actually have their
Mhm.
brands show up in a way that is commensurate to good brand health and good brand growth. And my my views only become stronger on that over the years. Marketeers have to have that commercial bone and have to have the want and the courage to step into those commercial forums and actually partner with the commercial folk in the business. It's the only way to build big, powerful brands.
It's so inspiring to hear that, and I think it's what makes you a great guest. And I'm really looking forward to getting into the details in a second of what we're going to talk about today around difficult challenges and difficult people, because a lot of my experience in marketing has been a little bit like isolationist, trying to operate in a vacuum. My job is to nurture the brand and to take care of the brand, and I don't want to take risk with its reputation. I don't want to take risks with its how we execute it. And the conversations that that we had previously to this podcast recording, but also from what you've just said, says no, I'm not going to operate in a vacuum. I'm working with these guys to make to drive value, and it's through the synergy that we end up with a really powerful brand, not by me operating in a vacuum.
Yeah, Chris, it's a great point. And I think it's an important point actually for businesses, not just marketing or commercial, for businesses. One of the one of the things that's become apparent to me is and I ask my clients this all the time actually, in the room, and there might be 12 people in the room. Who's a brand manager here? And quite often you'll get, two people sort of sheepishly put their hand up. And I'll
Yeah,
say, no, we're actually all brand managers here. Because if we don't get our pricing strategy right, our brand won't be attracting the right kind of consumers or might build the wrong type of reputation. If we don't get our
yeah.
packaging right, the quality of our packaging, the quality of our liquids, if we're not in the right channels, our brand's reputation will go in a direction that we might not want it to go. So the truth is, in my belief, Chris, an entire organisation are brand managers because every interaction, every touch point, every experience with a brand actually will have the opportunity to either enhance or actually detract from your brand equity. And really, we've only got one job to do as a total organisation, and that is to actually ensure that we're hitting our commercial targets. So we're delivering the expectations of our stakeholders, whoever they might be. But also, we're ensuring that the equity of our assets, our brands, are actually better tomorrow than they were today. And geez, they better be better the day after tomorrow than they are tomorrow. And so that's a real balance. How do we actually ensure we've got the right equity building and we're building the core sort of thoughts and feelings and emotions about our brands in the hearts and minds of the people we want, but whilst hitting our goals. And if that gets out of balance, you actually don't have a commercial proposition. You actually don't have a growth story, generally speaking. You don't have the growth story, a holistic growth story that you want. So I actually do believe we're all brand managers, Chris, and the job of people whose core job is to actually functionally manage that brand need to step into and need to be into the broader business conversation about how their brand operates through operations to consumers all the way through to customers. And probably, Chris, that customer conversation is the most important one that I believe, in my experience, we should be astutely aware of and involved in and influencing in the right way, in a way that our commercial partners want us to be.
That I remember having a realization about 10 years ago, just on that point you raised about brands and who connects with the audience and who's responsible for it. That 80%, I'm going to say 80% of the customer conversations from brands tend to be by their most junior people. So you're talking telesales people, you're talking customer service desks, you're talking retail assistants, you're talking demonstrators, like people who are almost straight out of university, straight out of graduate school, straight out of high school, even. These are the face of the brands. And I had this realization, and I talked to some senior people about it, and many of them don't get it. Exactly that point, that what people experience when they pick up the phone to talk to your customer service team is your brand. And if that experience is good, then you're onto a winner. If that experience is bad, it almost doesn't matter what else happens in your organization, because you potentially lost that customer. And that, and in today's world, they share that social media, they talk to their mates, all of a sudden your reputation is shot to pieces. And I don't think people really truly understand the gap that they have to, and the risk that exists through trying to cut corners, trying to take away kind of the quality at that interface. And I had experience a couple of years ago. I had a real problem with my laptop, and I had to get in touch with Microsoft. And oh my God, I dreaded that conversation. I thought, I'm going to get lost in the system. I'm going to be ignored. Why do Microsoft care about me? What's going to go on here? It was the best experience that I could possibly have hoped for, and way better than any experience I've had with any other customer service team. This guy was phenomenal, and it actually changed my experience, or my perception of Microsoft for the better. And it was simple things like, he said to me, I'll call you next Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. He called me, and he
Mm.
did it for weeks. He sent messages to me. He gave me advice. He said, I'm going to go and talk to my supervisor. I don't know what this problem is. I'm new to this. We became like friends, but it was such, he did what he was supposed to do. And that to me is what the essence of what you're talking about, from a brand which is Microsoft, which I guess is global, but no one really sees it as a personal brand, as a brand experience. For me, it is now.
It's terrific to hear that, Chris, because what you're saying does matter. And actually, the flip side is true also. Um, if, and I'm going to use Starbucks. I'm not saying this ever happens at Starbucks, by the way. I'm going to use Starbucks. If you on Saturday morning, you see some social media, or you see an ad for Starbucks advertising that they are the world's greatest coffee connoisseurs, and you think, oh, I fancy a Starbucks, and you go down and there's a line out the door, and it takes you, 8 minutes to get your order in, and you say, I'd like a skinny latte for Mark, and that's Mark with a C. And then you get down the other end and you're waiting, and you get a full fat flat white for Kark. Um,
Yeah.
you're not going to say they are the world's best coffee connoisseurs. You're actually going to say, actually, I didn't enjoy that experience, and I'll guarantee you, Chris, that you will share that experience more than you will share your Microsoft experience with people, because it's
Mhm.
by human nature. And all we're talking about there is that every touch point, everything matters in how your brand shows up and how it comes to life. And in that quick service or any service industry, your people that are consumer and customer facing, they've got a huge opportunity to either again enhance or detract what consumers think and feel about your brand. So everything matters. And you know my view is, right up the chain, be having those tough conversations about what great service means. Be having those tough conversations about the standards that actually you expect from everybody in the organization when it comes to ensuring that your consumers love what you're doing, because it matters. And in today's world, more than ever, that word of mouth is the powerful marketing growth driver. And it takes a lot, but you can't shy away from that. You've actually got to embrace it and take it on. There's a whole
Mm.
webcast conversation about that, Chris. Actually, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I totally agree. So let's get into, this episode, or what we talk about in this podcast, is about our guests' experience of dealing with difficult moments or difficult people in their career, and sharing those lessons and insights. So when I say to you difficult moment or difficult person in your career, what comes to mind, Andy?
Yeah, it's interesting, Chris, because when you briefed me on this, and I was thinking, okay, difficult moments, actually, because it's about the experiences and the moments, and about trying to achieve stuff. And I actually went back, if I'm honest with you, Chris, I went back to a great time in my career. I won't tell you how far back because it'll give my age away, but it is a little while back. I went back to a great time in my career where we actually, as a group, as a team, as an organisation, I believe achieved something quite extraordinary. But it was difficult, and what I concluded was that, whilst I was thinking about what to talk about, most things that have been breakthrough, most things that have been, let's call it transformational, although I don't like that word particularly, but let's call it doing something that hadn't been done before, are worth doing for sure. And there's an old cliche in this, isn't there? They're worth doing, but they might not have been done because they're tough. But if they're
Yeah.
worth doing and you're committed to it, and I mean really committed to it, Chris, they're worth wading into, and I mean that, I'm visualizing that as I say it. They're worth wading into and taking on. And it's a time many years ago, in Australia, on a brand called Bundaberg rum. Now, for people who might be listening to this, they might be saying Bundaberg what? Bundaberg rum is an Australian rum brand. It's as Australian as meat pies, kangaroos, and Vegemite. It's quintessentially Australian, been around since the 1800s. And I started working on it back in the day. And it
Back in
was
the
the number
1800s.
back in the 1800s. That's exactly right, actually. I said I wasn't going to give it away, Chris. Um, and I sort of started looking at the brand with the team, and we were the number two spirit brand in Australia. And just to put some context around that, Jim Beam was the number one, and we sold 17,500 drinks of Bundy every hour of every day, 24/7. Think that through. But Jim Beam was selling 34,000 drinks of Jim Beam every hour of every day, 24/7. So they were right out in front. They were double our size. And we
Yeah.
actually hadn't grown in over a decade. We'd been, meandering along, bouncing along. So we had scale. Certainly, number two isn't to be ashamed of, but we weren't growing. We weren't dynamic. And Bundy's a tough drink. Like, you either love it or hate it. But I love brands like that. I love brands that actually drive an opinion. Um, and because of its sort of polarization and its lack of performance, I guess, it had lost complete belief in the company. In fact, when I first started, I arranged to go meet one of the regional general managers, the regional sales manager of a region. I won't give it away. And I'd arranged to meet him, and I flew down there. I put my best suit on and I flew down there and got to the office, and I said, "Hello, I'd like to see Mr. Such and Such, please. My name's Andy Gibson from Bundy." And the receptionist said, "He's not here, actually. He's out. And tell me, why would you be down here trying to sell that rat's poison?" And I thought, "Ooh, here we go. This is going to be a lot of fun, isn't it?" So there was a complete lack of belief and really lack of interest in the company. Um, but we set about a vision. We, as a group, we got together and we set about a vision, and we said that we're going to be the number one spirit brand in Australia in 5 years. And Chris, I don't mind saying this because I actually think it was essential. We said that actually at a company conference.
Mm.
And from the stage, you're up there, the spotlights are on, we're looking out. And as it was said, half the room laughed and half the room cried. Um, but I actually was looking at the room, and I was looking at the regional sales managers, the GMs of sales for each region. And I saw two of them lean in. I saw two of them lean forward, and sort of give me a nod, and I went, "Oh, there's something in that." And I'll come back to that later in the podcast, Chris, because there's a lesson in what I learned. I didn't realize it at the time, but actually there's a lesson in what I learned. So we put that vision out there, and we
Which is
noted
common, right?
actually.
Well, this is
Well,
things that
yeah,
plenty of brands will stand up at a conference and say we're now going to take over the world, right? And
yeah.
particularly, refresh. We're going to refresh, and this refresh is going to change the world. So that's not new there, and that's probably why half the room laugh because they're like, "Oh, we've heard all this story before." So what do you do
I,
about it though? That's the
I,
key thing, isn't it?
I would think 100%. That the first thing, Chris, you've got to do, and I think the first thing you can't be is apathetic about it. My thought is anyone who's out there being brave and setting a vision, if you even smell remotely apathetic, remotely false about what you're doing, the gotcha squad will come out and you'll be got. You've actually got to believe in it. You've actually got to be all in here, boots in, and you've really got to believe it. And then you've got to start to drive some insight and start to give people some reasons to think, oh, there could be something in this. And, one of our little insights is one of the differences between us and Jim Beam at the time was that we were only selling 600,000 cases of ready to drink. So cans, 375 ml cans of Bundy mixed with cola, pre-mixed, ready to drink Bundy and cola. Jim Beam were doing about 1.5 million. So we got pretty curious about that and said, oh, is ready to drink one of the keys to growth here? And are we missing a trick? So, we just set about, Chris, um, um, starting to understand some insight around how we might be able to open the aperture of Bundy up. And the first one was, who are the regional sales general managers who might want to go with us? And this is what I was saying earlier. I reflected back on those two people who leaned right forward and sort of gave me a
Yeah.
bit of a nod. And I went, okay, there's a conversation to be had there. We then got into the consumer space and we realized that consumers want to drink RTDs immediately. In fact, something like 40% of the occasions were tradies. So, plumbers, carpenters, mechanics, coming back from a hard day's work in their utilities or utes, as we call them in Australia, who are
Yeah.
actually pulling through the drive-through bottle shop and wanting a bit of a reward for effort, a bit of a reward for their hard day at work. So there's a little key
The
there.
the idea of a drive-through bottle shop has got to be truly Australian. I don't think we have that here.
And and that occasion, Chris, is actually called the roadie. And so I think it really is quite Australian. The other, and out of that cold insight, we realised that beer is all in the fridges and cold, but actually ready to drink. The whole category was just sat on shelves, warm. We're going, ooh, what are we going to do about that? Then we looked at price and we realised that a consumer could get a 6 pack of beer for about $12, but one of these cans of Bundy and cola was $4. So we went, we've got a massive price disparity here, and is there something we could do there? Then the other insight, which was exciting actually, was that our Bundy loyalists, their share of throat, their share of what they drink was 50% Bundy and 50% beer. So we went, wow, you know, how do we start taking on that share of beer? How do we start thinking about let's take beer on? So we started to open up through insights just what the commercial opportunity could be and some potential inroads in. And we started a little mantra which said, how do we be Bundy but act like beer? And we said,
Yeah.
well, we think the key to that might be getting Bundy cold, getting Bundy priced right, and we felt like if we're going to act like beer, we might need multi packs. We might need 6 packs and 4 packs and multi packs where consumers could purchase more than one and get a price discount, get a price cut for actually purchasing more than one. And we said, okay, there could be a program here. There could be a program here. And we again, because of this lack of belief, we thought we don't know how to do this. We don't know the answers, Chris. So we actually, those two regional general managers that I talked about earlier that leaned in, we set up a little board and we called it the Bundy Brains Trust. It was like a little executive board, and we invited the commercial sort of animals out of their teams into this group with marketing, and we put someone from finance and manufacturing on that. And we laid out the opportunity. We laid out under that vision, we laid out the opportunity, we laid out the insights, and we said, right, are we up for this? Do we want to do this? And you know what, Chris, we got a resounding we got a resounding "we're up for it, but it's not going to be easy. It's going to be quite difficult. But we're here. Let's have a look at it." So that was
So
if you
that
like, Chris. Sorry, please.
no, no. So I just want to take a step back for a second because that's not when you talked about the the vision. We're going to become the number one brand in Australia, um, and then you start looking at the the growth opportunity. The growth opportunity is outside the category. Growth opportunity is to go to the beer category, not to be in the spirits category or the mixers category. It's a completely different category. That's a really interesting conversation because you're completely shifting the battleground, right? And I think that in itself is a courageous decision. Did you get resistance to that, or was it as you went through this journey with the board? Did people start to buy into what the data was telling you and what people wanted to, where the competitive space really was, or was there a bit of a disbelief? Like, come on, we're never going to get an Aussie to stop drinking beer and start drinking this. Like, how was that journey?
We got complete rejection, Chris. I said earlier, half the room laughed and half the room cried. As we're bringing this about and we're starting to socialise this thinking, I think the whole room cried actually. And so yeah, it was that we had to prove it out. We believed in it. Bundy's a polarizing drink, and we felt like getting our loyalists who drank half beer and Bundy to just eat into their beer share. We felt that was a poignant strategy. We felt that was a strategy that was worth pursuing. And at that stage, that wasn't a recruitment strategy, Chris. It was a frequency strategy. And
Yeah,
we didn't want them to drink more alcohol, full stop. We just wanted to have more of their share of
yeah,
alcohol consumption. And they loved
yeah.
Bundy, and we just felt we could actually, by being Bundy and acting like beer, we felt we could really open this up. But I mean,
Mm.
again, it was almost like we were born on another planet in the early days, and there was very little belief across the broad company. But so we had to set it up, Chris. We had to say, all right, we get it. And you know what? I got it. I totally got it. I totally got it. It
Mm.
was it was a, as you say, it was shifting the paradigm in thinking. And the beer boys weren't going to roll over without a fight, and they had really long arms and really deep pockets, and they negotiated
Yeah, they
well
can
with the
go. They
trade.
can go deep on price. You mentioned price
Way
being
deep.
a yeah. I mean, if price is a key barrier, and it often is, particularly with a volume based product like you talked about packs of stuff. How did you get toward? How do you take those guys on?
So, I mean, the first was to get the business all aligned, and we again, and I think this is one of the lessons, Chris. Don't blame others. No one wants to do it. If you believe in it and you're committed to it, and we all were, by the way, including the commercial partners who were just brilliant on that brains trust, we all believed in it. But we knew we had hurdles to jump, and sat there saying, "Oh, I can't do it because they don't want to do it," is just not the answer. You've got to actually bring people along. You've got to actually start to prove it out. And I call it setting up your jet streams of belief, Chris. Like getting people in, as a plane or a car goes past, you actually get sucked up into that jet stream. You've actually got to
Yeah.
start to build momentum and start to get
Mm.
those jet streams of belief pulling people along. So I said to the business that I wanted to buy fridges because the beer boys owned all the fridges and we couldn't get Bundy in their fridges just because of their negotiation power. So I said
In this
I
is in
want to.
store now, right? This is in
This is
store. You're
now.
thinking about it
This is in.
in
This
store.
is in
You
bottle shops,
yeah.
pubs, and drive-throughs all over Australia, Chris. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and beer was loudly and proudly displayed, beautifully cold, ready to serve in all those fridges. But there was contractual obligations the trade had back in that day that said, we're not putting Bundy in the fridges. So I went and said, hey, I want to sort of start building a fridge program for Bundy, and I was just fundamentally rejected like you're not doing it. But actually, Chris, I knew I used to drive past it every day. There was a catering store down the road from the office. Like an industrial catering store that sold like deep fryers and Bain Marie's and guess what, fridges. So I went and bought
Yeah.
30 fridges on my company credit card, and actually put those fridges out into the trade to prove that cold would help growth. And not just cold, Chris. It's really interesting. The fridges acted as a visibility tool as well.
Yeah.
So get
Right.
Bundy from out the back and get it up front. Make
Yeah.
consumers. Our little saying was make consumers trip over Bundy to get to their beer. Um,
Mm.
um, and then the other thing I said we need multi packs, and my whole capex. If I think about that paper now, it was awfully written. But my whole capex request got rejected from the business to put in multi-packing machinery on the end of our lines, um, and so we actually went and printed brown paper bags and put barcodes on the bags. Where the bottle shop owner, the drive-through bottle shop, the pub could drop 3 cans of Bundy and Cola into a brown paper bag, twist it off at the top, and scan the barcode. So we started to test out multi-packing, quite a manual process, but we started to test out multi-packing, and we priced it at 3 for 10. So remember, we were $4 each. So we're now starting to give a price break. We're now about half, just under half the price of beer, but we're getting closer. Um, um, and you know what? We started to get some real growth in these couple of regions that were with us. I then got called in actually by the CFO, who's turned into a good friend of mine through life actually. But I got called into him as he saw the fridge charge on my credit card,
The
and I'm not
expenses.
telling anybody. I'm not telling anybody to go and flaunt company policy here. But he basically said that I had broken company policy. Uh, and that I needed disciplining. And so he dragged me in front of the managing director at the time, who again is a friend of mine now, who's a great supporter. Um, and I was stood in his office, and is this true, Andy? Did you really do this? And I said, yes, I did. We did it. But hey, and he said to me, he looked at me, the MD, and he goes, did it work? And I said, we grew at 40%. John, we grew at 40%. And when you couple that with the fridges, we're 65% up in the territories where we've got it implemented. And he went, great. Can we do more of it? And I said, yeah, I think we can. So I got disciplined. And folks, again, I'm not telling anyone to flaunt company policy. I got disciplined. I got a very official warning, and I shook hands and made up with the CFO. And we started to get a little bit of proof, but we needed it on a much bigger scale. And so we went in and did a discipline, what I call a BPTO, a brand price trade off study, where we actually did a big sample. It was $120,000 study, which at the time was a big study, where we got a sample of a huge quantitative sample, and we actually tested pricing of Bundy and Cola versus pricing of beer, and where the intersection, the paradigm shift started to happen for Bundy, where our loyalists would actually choose Bundy at a certain price over beer. And it was at about a 30% premium to beer. At that point, we started seeing absolutely stupid numbers, like really big numbers. So we took that data, Chris, but again, we had an organisation that were just viscerally rejecting what we were trying to do. And we said, okay, we're going to test to win here. We're going to do a scale test. And we called it a pressure test, and we're going to test to win. So we took a big regional city in Australia that we could isolate. Um, and it was in Queensland, which was one of the regional GMs of sales territories, who was on the Brains Trust. He really believed in it, and we isolated this big 100,000 population town. We isolated it, and we put all the growth drivers in. So we put pricing in. We didn't have the multi packs in a pack yet. We didn't have that belief from the company, so we used the paper bag mechanism. But we actually did go out and rent a lot of fridges. And we put fridges in all the outlets that we deemed were the important outlets in that town. And we actually tested another lever, which was outdoor signage, which was literally as you're driving along the road to the bottle shop or to the drive through up the road, we actually paid the council. We paid for the hardware and we got the permits to actually
Yeah.
put signage in, which actually had beautiful pictures of Bundy and Cola cans in ice with the burst of the ring pull and the spray, and
Oh,
with
nice.
pricing on it, three for 10. With the bottle shop's name on it. So we started to get visibility and we started to drive what I call real disruption of the consumer journey, prior to the consumer who was just going into that bottle shop more or less, or that drive through. For a default purchase of beer, we started to drive disruption onto the journey in, and we conducted that pressure test.
No, but you've created more than that, because the signage and the triggers outside of that is, you're not just relying on a consumer mission who's going in to buy beer and relying on the footfall that's going in there. You're actually creating potentially a new consumer. I wasn't going to go in today, but I saw that they're doing 3 for 10, so I'm going to pop in on my way back home. And you know, so you did play on the different levers, and I think one of the things I hear, Andy, here is courage backed up by courage with innovation and creativity, and then real cross organizational engagement. So we're going to become the number one brand in Australia, right? People are going, right. How are you going to do that? Well, we're going to do it by being different. So we're going to take on beer. We're going to become beer because we've got this product in a can, which, if we can serve it cold, suddenly becomes a competitor to beer. And then people are going, yeah, but that just getting it cold is going to be a pain in the ass. So you're like, well, because you can't get it in the fridges in the shops, so then let's put it in our own fridges. Our beer comes in a multi-pack, so let's do multi-packs. We're not paying to put multi-packs in our manufacturing plants because it's too expensive for a trial that we don't even know it's going to happen. And by the way, you're cutting the price anyway. So why would we want to do it if we're going to cut the price? Well, let's be creative and say, how can we do a multi pack without doing a multi pack? So we'll print some bags. We can do that in under my budget and my marketing budget, because that's the way we're going to do it. And it's kind of each step of that is a courageous decision aligned behind a real ambitious goal to move forward. And lots of other people at this point would have gone, yeah, you're right, it's too hard. It's too hard to do this. It's too hard to do that. It's too hard to solve that problem. And it's those courageous decisions, but it's also not just you. The fact that you found some sales guys who want to do it, you found some supply chain people who were really keen on doing it, you engage with other people across the organization, then suddenly becomes, as you said, right, it's momentum. And I say this a lot about teams. The difference between ordinary teams and high performing teams is how far people are committed to that team, to the success of the team. Whenever I ask people to say, tell me about a team that you're really proud of, they can name it. They've got an example, but they also describe the fact that everybody was fully 100% into that team. No one was hedging. No one was kind of protecting their own reputation, and that's how you create really high performance teams. And the risk of all these teams is that if my reputation is at risk by failure, I've got a choice. Do I step away from the team and separate myself, in which case I make the team weaker? Or do I step in and say, we absolutely need to do whatever it takes to win? That's what you created here. Powerful stuff.
Yeah, and Chris, it's spot on. You can't do it alone. And like me, my team, we had some answers, but we didn't have them all. You actually have to. go with the goers, a little saying of mine, and find the people around you who want to help. But one of the things that that I believe in is a little saying: if not you, who? So if it ain't you going to believe in this, it ain't you going to take the courage and have the guts to actually take it on. Who's going to? And if you believe in it, why wouldn't you? Because no one else is going to do it. So if
Mm,
not you, who? And on that failure thing, Chris, I think that's really important because people are afraid of failure. And my relationship to that is if this had have failed, it would have been a failure. But I wouldn't have been a failure. This would have been a failure. I wouldn't have been a failure.
mm,
And just ensuring that you've got clear the relationship between what it is you're trying to achieve and the project that you're on or the activity that you're trying to get away and its success versus your success. Um, because yeah, listen, and I'm giving you all the nice stuff here. There was moments here where it was tough, and it was like, do we keep going? And it was the belief, the commitment, and the personal investment from all of us, not me, from all of us
yeah.
that actually kept us going. But we were all really clear in setting out that vision. Let's do it at the highest level here. If we didn't hit that number one spirit brand vision in 5 years, that would have been a fail. But we wouldn't have been failures. Because I'll
Mm,
tell you what, we'd have got Bundy a whole lot further in the space and the time that we were operating than we might have if we didn't have the courage to lay that vision out there. Because
yeah.
that is laying your soul out there for others to criticize. My view is go, if you believe in it, go for it,
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally
Yeah.
agree with it, Andy. And I think it is about that commitment that everyone goes 100%. And that's often the difference. If you've got people who hedge, who say, "Oh, I'm not going to stake my reputation on this. I'm gonna be the naysayer. I'm going to be negative," then doubt creeps in and things don't get done. You need the backing of a whole range of people across the business to really drive this home. And you know, that's where great teams, you if you reverse engineer them, it's because everyone said, you know what, I'm fully committed to making this a success. I'm not gonna step back just in case. I'm not going to take an easy ride just in case. And at the end of it, you end up with something that could never fail because regardless of where the benchmark was for success, you learn, you develop, you grow, you take it to a new level. So let's get to the end. Let's get to the end of the story. Where did you end up?
I,
What happened?
I'll jump to the end of the story really quick. We became uh, second to Coca Cola, the second biggest fridge fleet owner in Australia, and we didn't want to purchase fridges. We weren't in the fridge business. I didn't understand fridges, so I went and talked to Coke. I went and talked to their trade marketing guy and said, "Hey, how do you guys do your fridges?" And they said, "Well, we just rent them through this company over here who run the whole asset program." And I said, "Oh, and maintenance as well." And he went, "Yeah, mate, like don't buy fridges, whatever you do." And I'm like, "Oh, geez, I thought we were going to
He
buy
sounds
them
like the
actually."
CFO.
Yeah, yeah. So we became the second biggest fridge fleet owner. We got multi packs in. We actually put a multi packer in that could do 4 packs, 6 packs, 10 packs, 18 packs, and we got multi packs in. And we really, really, really upped our game in multi packing. And there was a tough one in there too, Chris. The trade didn't want to give margin away, and we needed that conversation. We needed to walk into it and again, on these these fierce conversations, my view is don't avoid them, like run at them, and find the right people who can help you solve them. And we did. We ended up changing the margin conversation from a percentage margin to a cash margin conversation, and the growth was such like we were doubling the size of this brand every year. The Bundy and Cola brand, that is not the total brand, the Bundy and Cola brand. We were growing by like 80s, 90s, 110s. And the growth supported a cash margin conversation. So we changed that whole conversation. Um, we actually pulled together, the guys on the Brains Trust pulled together an amazing negotiation and selling story for fridges. And we put really strict criteria around the fridges. We had different sizes, 2 door, 3 door, 4 door, countertop fridges, but we put really strict commercial diagnostics and commercial benchmarks around whether you get a fridge or not. What was your throughput?
Mm,
And we measured that the whole way. We measured that the whole way. We rolled out that signage program at huge scale. Um, uh, we actually, Chris, the Beer Boys were the biggest sponsors of sport in Australia, and your listeners might
yeah.
know that Australians we do like a bit of sport. Um, we ended up, again, to just break the paradigm. We ended up sponsoring the Wallabies, the Australian rugby team. So Bundaberg Rum was the sponsor of the Wallabies, and the British and Irish Lions, the British, the Irish, the Kiwis, the Saffers, all came to Australia and played in the Bundaberg Rum Rugby Series, which was just unheard of. It was a breakthrough.
Yeah.
And then we went one stage further. We actually put a kegging line into the manufacturing plant, and we started delivering pubs kegs of Bundy and Cola on tap, which beer drinkers
Oh,
drank literally in a like the equivalent of a pint glass in Australia, a schooner
yeah.
or a pot glass. So Bundy drinkers could be in the shout and actually be playing an equal part of the shout. Because when you're in a shout in Australia and everyone's drinking beer and you say, "I'll have a Bundy, thanks," the whole group looks at you thinking,
Yeah,
"Oh
everyone looks
God,"
at you, yeah.
you know. Yeah. So we actually just took that barrier out of the way, and we actually became the biggest spirit brand in Australia in 3.5 years. A funny story, Chris. The year we started this process, we sold 623,000 cases of Bundy and Cola. 3 years in, the Rugby World Cup, we hosted the Rugby World Cup in Australia, and of course, Bundy was one of the key sponsors. There's a whole other
Yeah.
podcast in that negotiation, by the way, but
Yeah.
we were one of the key sponsors. And during the Rugby World Cup 6 weeks, we sold 685,000 cases of Bundy and Cola. So we sold at the start of this journey, we sold our annual volume in 6 weeks during the Rugby World Cup, um, and
So
um, and it was an amazing experience of growth, of tenacity, of humility, of learning, of leadership for not just me. I mean, it did all that for me, but there were so many people touched by this at the time that launched careers out of it. Is the truth, Chris? That it just became one of those moments in time that you look back on fondly, which is why I felt it was the story to share on this podcast today.
it's an amazing story, Andy. And I think it's a great example of how, you do hard things. You said it at the start of the conversation, like when I asked you about difficult moments, and it's wading in to do hard things. And so often I've run a lot of workshops with people, brainstorming ideas, working through, what's going to be our strategy over the next 3 to 5 years. And they take the easy to do things, like what can we do easily? And yet organizations who really transform performance do so because they take on the hard things. And if you'd done a workshop and said, how do we drive, where's our biggest brand opportunity? And someone said, well, Bundy and Cola is, I don't know, 5% of our current business. Um, and if we're going to grow it, these are the barriers. And the barriers would be uh, getting fridge lines so it's cold, selling multi packs, negotiating lower percentage margins with our customers, and getting our consumers to drink it instead of drinking beer. People had said that's in the way too hard box. Let's go. Let's take something else on. But what's magic about it is, even in the way too hard box, there's a strategy that you can win. So just going back to how do we negotiate the prices and get our customers to think differently about pricing? Well, the biggest lever that any customer has is their competitor. It's not you. It's not like how much Bundy they buy from you or how much other stuff is in your portfolio that you're trying to leverage off against. They're worried more about what their competitor is. And so you say to them, do you know what I'll do? I'm going to sell it to a smaller competitor. Let's find the people who do want to get on board with this ship, and let's show them that they're making money. And then the big boys will phone you up and say, "Where's my fridge?" And you go, "Oh, now we can get dictate terms," because they're worried about losing value, volume, market share to their competitors. And as soon as you can start playing that game, one bottle shop against another, one chain against another, one drive through versus some, all of a sudden, you're creating opportunity. And those conversations are way easier when you've got that leverage.
Yeah, 100%. And, it's one of the lessons out of this, right? Which is, um, uh, how do you build? I call it the jet streams of belief, Chris, which is, how do you start building that belief? And that's one conversation by one conversation at a time, one initiative by one initiative at a time. But actually, as those wins, hopefully they're wins, as those wins start to come in, making sure that you're telling people about those wins.
Mm.
Out of this whole era, I still do this today. I call it testing today for growth tomorrow. I always talk to clients and I always talk to brands. What tests? What is it that you're testing small that to prove stuff out that you can start to scale with some confidence if you get the results you want? And
Yeah.
I believe, Chris, that should be just this virtuous cycle of just finding people who want to go and want to try something with you and testing it and starting to prove it out and starting to share the word, spread the word, and starting to build your arguments and build belief. To start to build, you called it momentum earlier, Chris. Start to build that momentum.
Mhm.
Because once that ball starts rolling, we all know this, don't we? Once it starts rolling, things start to become easier. And the challenge
Yeah.
for us all is how do we get the ball rolling?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, Andy, we're running out of time as ever. Time goes quickly. If you were going to summarize the things that you learned from this, or the advice that you would give to people who've heard this story today and feeling inspired to take on the world, what advice would you give people?
That's a big question, isn't it? I think the first one, and I said it earlier, is if not you, who? This takes leadership and it takes tenacity. If it was easy to do, it would have been done more than likely. And you've got to find something you can really wade into with full belief. That would be the first one. If you don't truly believe in it, don't do it. Go find something that you do believe in. Um, no one has the monopoly on good ideas, and you've got to find the experts around you that want to partner with you and really partner with and really go with. You say sometimes, and you mentioned it earlier, Chris, the naysayers, like run to them and find out why. Like what's the
Yeah.
problem you're seeing that I'm not seeing? Because there could be magic in that. There
Hmm.
could be real magic in that. But the trick is not getting wrapped up in the no. It's getting wrapped up in what's the issue and how could we solve that issue. So
Yeah.
you know find the right partners, find the people that want to go and go with them. um, um, don't be afraid of the fierce conversation. They're the
Yeah.
ones to have, actually. Don't be afraid of them. There'll be people around you that can help you navigate through those fierce conversations. There will be. There's people all around you that can help you navigate. So put it on the table and say, here's what I'm worried about. Here's my issue. Here's what I'm hearing. Here are the here are the reasons why people aren't buying in, and work out, how to navigate that fierce conversation. I have a belief as humans, Chris, that if we were having more of the real conversations we need to have as humans, the world would be a better place. But that's a whole
Oh,
that's a whole other podcast, possibly. And then just this testing for growth mentality, like, what are you testing today, folks, for growth tomorrow? What's
yeah.
going to be the next thing you take to your organisation, to your stakeholders, to say, hey, there's something over here that I'd like to talk about because I've got a little bit of sort of evidence that there could be growth here, and I'd like to talk about how together we might actually take a bigger, more scalable, more disciplined approach to proving out what I think I've just proved out.
Yeah.
And I think that's it, Chris.
Okay. I think that's a lot, Andy, and I think it's amazing. And it's been a fabulous conversation, inspiring as it was ever 30 years ago. And thanks for sharing it, Andy, and I appreciate your time.
I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity, Chris. I've enjoyed it too. All the best.
Thanks for listening. I hope you took away some useful insights. Join us again next time when we unpick the behaviours of more difficult people. Until then, take care and see you soon.